So the topic for discussion is Indian polity, not from Lakshmikant's perspective, but from NCERT's perspective. So this is a part of Guru Shishya program where you will be having 34 tests, and among the 34 tests, the first 4 tests will be on NCERT based polities, not only polities, but from all topics, purely from NCERT point of view. So you may dare to ask one question: why not Lakshmikant? Only NCERT. The answer is very simple. What is the importance of NCERT? Yeah, it may give the basics. Next. What? Yes. That's one point. So why did UPSC ask question from NCERT? It's an authentic source. Due to what reason? That's the first reason. It is simply an unobjectionable thing in the country of India, because this is published by National Council for Education Research and Training Center. So simply one thing is clear: if whatever resource, whatever author, whatever Supreme Court judge may sever whatever thing in his mind, this is the thing published by the government of India. So simply it is unobjectionable. No objections can be raised by any person in the country. So in whatever country we may take, every country sets a single education policy for the governance of the country. And education policy determined in the country by the body NCERT. So it reflects the aspirations of the society. It reflects how the education is going to impact the society. So our constitution, our polity, everything is existing on some educational policies. So whatever we may look, the Indian polity by Lakshmikant is simply one thing. It is just a note for civil service, but it's not the government publication. But in my hand, you can see one thing, that is Indian Constitution at Work. It's an NCERT. So you can, what the thing everyone prefer is that read from NCERTs from 6 to 12. But you have already burdened with all these topics from the NCERT, standard books, everything. So how to prioritize these NCERTs for the Polity Guru Shishya program? Simply one thing, you have to avoid certain NCERT books and pick out some NCERT books. Like you have seen, I have brought NCERTs from these candidates and just took this book, Indian Constitution at Work. So this kind of picking up from the NCERTs is the must thing you have to note. So you may ask how to or why to avoid the Constitution. I will simply ask one question. You all are aware about rights, right? Your rights. Rights. So right, can you define what is right? What do you mean by right? Yes, it's a claim raised by the citizens against the state. So all the rights will be some interests of some person, some interests which are protected by the law and which acts as a claim against the state, right? So we know that there are certain rights which are protected by law. So we can classify it as a legal right. And legal right, some law may be protecting one's right. This law can be either statute or constitutional law. In the constitution itself, it can be what? Fundamental rights and constitutional rights. So you are done and easy with the classification of rights, right? So you know that right is an interest protected by law, and the rights are on the basis of some law, and law that may be on statute part or constitutional part. In constitutional part, we are having constitutional rights and fundamental rights. So I am asking you one question: is the right to vote what kind of right or which kind of right? What right? Only legal right. Constitutional right. Is it fundamental right? So if I am giving you two options, either it is legal right or constitutional right, which one you will pick? So is it protected by law? Right. So all the constitutional rights are part of legal right. So are you a bit confused about picking it constitutional right or legal right? Because all the constitutional rights are legal rights. So how can you pick constitutional right or legal right? You can pick it up from only one part, that is NCERT. Because in NCERT it is given that right to vote is a constitutional right. So the UPSC asked this question, and many of the candidates have confused about the topic, what to pick, legal right or constitutional right. So the answer will give from the NCERT. So that's the importance of NCERTs. So you will be having multiple texts from standard 6 to standard 12. But I will recommend you to read this book first, Indian Constitution Network. If you are not familiar or if you are feeling any bit trickiness in reading this book, then you can go to Democratic Politics from 9th standard. Because every candidate who is going to the school should be aware of the basic political rights, political procedures, political phenomena, everything. So from that point of structuring a student, he should be well aware of the polity of the country, right? So if you are having any doubts regarding the democracy, some other key terms, you have to refer that book. Because in no other way, Lakshmikant is going to provide the constitutional basis or conceptual basis for the democracy. Any definition, any matter which is described in the Lakshmikant are purely on the factual basis. But NCERT provides which thing? That conceptual clarity. Nowadays, the UPSC has started with a new era of questions where the questions are directly coming from the concepts or the philosophy behind the constitution. From where can you get this philosophy? Lakshmikant. Simply the question that I have told about rights. Simply the rights are described in the Lakshmikant as fundamental rights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the actual person who should suffice the claim of the citizen are the civil servants. That civil servant should be absolutely clear with how this concept of rights has been emerged. This right has an emergence from the revolution of the French and many other revolutions like world revolutions. So the NCERT, which focuses on the conceptual clarity based upon the past events, has clearly defined what is the right, what is the basis of the rights, what are the consequences of the right, what are the restrictions on the rights. So NCERT will give what? Just the phenomenon or the philosophy behind the constitution. This is the questions on the last year which are based. Next upon a question, have you heard about the constitutional form of the government or constitutionalism? Have you heard about that? Constitutionalism. So what does that mean? Limited government. So in any bar of the Lakshmikant, have you heard about this constitutionalism? Have you heard about constitutionalism? No. Simply the constitutionalism is the topic of the constitutional philosophy. This philosophy of constitutional government is from the NCERT. Constitutional form of the government is a limited form of government, where the powers, functions and the procedures used by the state are circumscribed by the limit of the constitution. So this is the philosophy behind constitution. So the philosophy behind rights, the classification of the legal rights and constitutional rights, the form of secularism, democracy, all these concepts are mentioned in the constitution, in the NCERT itself. So thereby we can clearly declare that NCERT is a base of preparation. And from picking out the NCERT from 6 to 12, you have to mandatorily look at this book. So now I am going to take some of the topics from this book. Later on we will move to next NCERTs. So I think you might have been having this book with you. Are you having? Okay. So the first topic you can see is that constitution, why and how. What does this imply? Why we need the constitution? Can we see the topic in Lakshmikant? What are the functions of the constitution? Can we see it there? It is simply the philosophy. So what are the functions of the constitution? What does the constitution prescribe to the society? What it may give the moral attitude or moral sympathy to the people, to the state, to the political parties. All the stakeholders are the functions of the constitution. So the philosophy behind running the state is given in the topic 1. So the question that I have asked, what is a constitutional form of government or constitutionalism, has been asked in 2020 prelims and 2021 prelims. So simply this is a symbolism from the UPSC that we are diverting our channel from Lakshmikant to NCERTs. It is simply that, because in most of the test series that are provided in some or other parts are more focused on the Lakshmikant part. But what everyone is forgetting is that looking for the basics. That is the NCERTs. So simply this thing is unobjectionable thing. Mostly the answer keys of the UPSC are framed only as per the NCERT's rules. Secondly, if any persons because I think the October batch is sitting there and June batch has been started the class only 5 months since. So most of you are going to be clarified on certain topics, and these topics are highly complexly described in the Lakshmikant. So what you young aspirants can do is that get the concepts clear from the NCERTs. Get the concepts clear. No other book can suffice the conceptual clarity other than NCERTs. Nothing can clear. Because democracy, as a form of government, you should be aware of the what was the need before democracy, what was the existing state of anarchy in the monarchy system, and how the people of that country have made the protest and struggle for achievement of democracy, and what kind of rights like liberty, equality, fraternity has been raised in the French Revolution, and that topic has been imbibed in our preamble itself. So where are you getting this connection? Connections are interlinking between the NCERTs in the history as well as in politics. So it has been dealt in our book like world politics, contemporary politics, like the political phenomena of Augusto Pinochet, Aung San Suu Kyi. All this will give an insight about the period of democracy. One question which has asked about what do you mean by liberty? What do you mean by liberty? What do you mean by liberty? What? Absence of restrictions. Other than that? Yes. Can you differentiate between liberty and freedom? Liberty and freedom. What? What is liberty? Is fulfilling every aspect. Any other opinions regarding distinction between liberty and freedom? This is a clarity. This is a concept which you can only get from the insights from NCERTs, not directly from NCERT, but from insights. Liberty is an inherent right for any people. Freedom is something given. You all will be knowing that in the current perspective. So liberty is one thing that is inherent. Liberty is a right which is accrued to the human only by the reason that he is a human, or it is an awarding of nature. Whereas freedom is something granted by the state, which are coupled with restrictions. So these kind of restrictions or these kind of minute distinctions will matter in the NCERT, in the UPSC prelims itself. Because liberty is a phenomenon which is unrestricted, so which may provide the opportunity to everyone to develop oneself fully. So this is the distinction. So all these topics like rationality, democracy, liberty, everything are contained in the NCERT. So in the book of political theory and thought, another NCERT, where they have given the importance of all these conceptual topics in the constitution, where that is the constitutional philosophy. In the same perspective, it is also helpful in the mains perspective also. Because last year the first question was describe about the constitutional morality of the state. This constitutional morality, you can search every page of the Lakshmikant, you will not find it. So NCERT plays a crucial role in your selection, in your ranking, and in your GS2 also. So this is very simple that for clearing the prelims, nowadays the polity NCERT is a must. So I am going to take certain topics where you have to majoritarily focus for your coming prelims examination, the model test series on November 6. Okay. So the first topic is constitution, why and how. Simply you have to do is that to be aware of the functions of the constitution. What is a constitution? How this theory of the constitution has been developed. So you have to just look on these topics, because this book is only a 220 pages book. You only need about 5 days to complete this book. So just skim through the topic, and once you have been unfamiliar with certain topics, you just search it for Google. Since it is NCERT, you may not need to ponder something more on the Google. Okay. So in the first part, you have to check what is the phenomenon of constitution, what do you mean by constitutionalism, constitutional form of the governments. All these PYQs are asked from this first topic. So you have to look the first chapter. Secondly, about the rights in the Indian constitution. So rather than jumping onto the Lakshmikant's rights part, you have to clear about these rights in the constitution. Why the rights have been awarded, just as I have described in the few minutes before. Okay. Thirdly, about the election and representation. In the main topic, it is given that salient features about the Representation of Peoples Act 1951. Okay. So it is very clear that representation of peoples and election as a feature of democracy has always been asked by UPSC. So you have to be clear about the representative form of democracy. because democracy exists in two forms, that is direct and indirect. This distinction is given in the NCERT, where the direct feature of the democracy and indirect feature of democracy differs in a way of election. That the election through representative form of the democracy is the basis of democratic form of the government in our country. So we have to look about the constitutional bodies like Election Commission, their process of functioning, model code of conduct, and the election laws like ROPA Act. And fourthly, about the three pillars of the democracy, that is executive, legislature, and judiciary. So the most questions from the test will be asked from this part, executive, legislature, and judiciary. Among these, legislature part is the most important because majority of the questions in prelims are from parliament part. So parliament acts as the union legislature for the country. So these three pillars of the democracy are a must to be covered. Even if you skip all the parts, you have to focus on the 4, 5, 6 topics. That is executive, legislature, and judiciary. All the motions that are being passed in the legislature. What are the functions of the legislature? Resolutions, special powers of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. This all to be dealt in this topic. Okay. And about the executive, that executive is selected from the legislature itself. So it shares an intrinsic relation in our form of parliamentary form of governance. So we have to be very clear on the topics of election of the executive, election of council of ministers, and their accountability and responsibility to the parliament itself. So all these two topics are interlinked. And whenever the functions of the executive and legislature are being contravened by the law or the constitution, then the sixth topic appears, that is judiciary. Okay, so by dealing the fourth and fifth topic, certain of the legal issues may arise in our country, and these are settled by the body known as judiciary. So the sixth part of the judiciary falls an important role because in majority of the questions they have asked about the functioning of the high courts, their validity to check the constitutional amendments, judicial reviews, guaranteeing of the rights, Supreme Court's procedural parts, everything are being asked by the UPSC. So you have to look about the judiciary parts itself. And another thing is the peculiar characteristics of the Indian federalism. Indian federalism, India has its own brand of federalism. Its own brand of federalism cannot be, you cannot directly portray it from the Lakshmikant. This concept of federalism has a link with India's historical period, where the certain of the acts has directly influenced the constitutional making and the constitutional way of federalism. So the Indian brand of federalism has its base, and this base you can only get from this book. Okay, so we have to look for why the federalism, why we adopted the quasi-federal system of government, and why we have adopted the unitary biased form of federalism. So you all have to be clear about the constitutional part, that conceptual part from the seventh topic. Here mainly you have to deal about the center-state relation, that in both executive way and legislative way, that administrative relation, executive relation, legislative relation, and especially how this relation is having a biased form in the emergency times. Okay, so all these topics are described in the Lakshmikant itself, but you have to be very clear on this part, this philosophical part. Ninth is about the constitution as a living document. Why the constitution is called as a living document? Why? Yes. So can you describe the analogy that has been written in Lakshmikant for constitution as a living document? In Lakshmikant, certain heading is given, that is amendment of the constitution. So they are making it in more a mechanical way. Here the topic 9 is describing as constitution as a living document. That itself shows that our constitution is an evolving kind of one. It is an organic one. But the Lakshmikant is saying that amending procedure of the constitution. So this is the distinction between Lakshmikant and NCERT. So we have to be very clear why the constitution should act as a living document. Why the constitution needs amendment. How can the constitutional amendments can be proceeded? And how these can be challenged. All these things are given in the Lakshmikant itself, but here you will know it as in a philosophical part. So you have to be very clear on this part. It is describing about the Article 368, Part 20 of the Constitution, that is the amending powers of the Constitution. Next, 10th is the summing up of the all topics, that is the philosophy of the Constitution. This philosophy of the Constitution is mainly reflected in the main topics, where the questions like constitutional morality, where the form of constitutional government, constitutional governance, limited governance are usually asked. But nowadays it is gaining prominence, that I have already mentioned. So the philosophy behind the constitution is also being provided, and you have to just skim through these topics and get aware with this all of the topics. So this is the things you have to mandatorily go through this book. So this is the first book. So in any way, before November 6th, you have to complete this book. Okay, this is the first thing. Secondly, if you are feeling any of the difficulty in dealing with this book, then you can go through this 9th standard textbook known as Democratic Politics. Where if you are not having, if you are hearing about the democracy for time since and you are not clear with these concepts, then you can go to the case studies which are given in the first topics, like the Myanmar's military agenda and all these topics. You can get aware about the real life examples from neighboring countries. And here also, what are the features of the constitution? The philosophy of the constitution is good. Look this. So this should be studied when we are in 5, 6, 7 years back. Okay. So we are in the dire necessity to go back to this philosophy of the constitution and look and have a look on these topics. In all these topics, it is given sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic. All these features are given in our 10th or 9th standard. So we have to be very clear on these topics. So you can look for all the keywords that are given in the preamble and can have a basic definition on these topics. Okay, so I have to be very clear on these topics. So that's the main purpose of the reading NCERTs. So these two NCERTs are the must go. If you can't clear with this democratic Indian constitution at work, then do not attempt the test. Okay. So this is the main thing you have to go with. And secondly, about this politics in India since independence, it mainly deals with the regional politics and regional parties evolution and popular struggles. So you don't need to go all these topics. If you have the time, then you can have a just watch on these topics. This book mandatorily should be covered. If you are getting the time, then you can go for all 4 NCERTs. Okay, but this book is the must. I think you all have been reading the Lakshmikant also, right? So a basic knowledge from the Lakshmikant along with the philosophy behind this constitution will help you to clear more than 120 marks. For whatever the topics have been completed till now, you can look for that. Is the polity over here?